We all knew this was coming. Let's not beat around the bush. We all know the routine, so I'm just gonna cut to the chase.
Overall, here is my problem. James Gunn is the wrong director, writer, creator for this thing.
I saw Chewbacca on the cover of People magazine. I was like, oh my God.
He's just wrong for it. It's Guardians of the Galaxy with Superman in it. And so that means it's all kind of a mess?
So this movie is too much like Guardians of the Galaxy because it's a mess? I don't know how those movies are messy. They seem to have very focused plot lines that are very easy to follow. Well, for most of us at least.
It's an overstuffed movie in every way. It's visually overstuffed. In terms of plot, the plot holes are big enough to drive a truck through them. There are character problems. And all of it is just kind of wrapped around this gauzy, fast-paced, jokey tone that doesn't mesh with Superman as central part of Americana, to me.
I mean, Superman wears a goofy outfit and is known for his lighthearted personality, so I fail to see how James Gunn is making a mistake by playing into the goofy, comic booky elements.
James Gunn's sensibility is always to be subversive. That is what he does. He does subversive in Guardians of the Galaxy, right? He takes a comic book movie and he turns it into sort of a potty-mouthed sitcom.
Don't drink fountain water, you idiot.
Having humorous moments doesn't make it a sitcom. There's plenty of moments where James Gunn takes his characters and the overall stakes seriously, so this kind of seems like cherry picking.
And I get that after the interpretation of the Snyderverse is over serious, he's reversing himself into completely the opposite direction. But what that means is that he's constantly subverting everything.
I was raised with a dog that was my sister.
The very beginning of the movie, you are told that Superman is the most powerful metahuman, right? There's like a placard that says, 30 years ago, the metahumans arrived. 3 years ago, Superman emerged. 3 weeks ago, there was an invasion, and now 3 minutes ago, Superman's ass got kicked.
I'm not messing around, I'm doing important stuff.
He's not very super.
He's not very super because he lost a fight to someone who is literally a clone of him. Being super isn't about winning every fight, it's about having extraordinary abilities. And if you pay attention to the movie, you'll see that's exactly what he has.
He is not the Man of Steel. He is not invulnerable.
Why does he need to be invulnerable?
He gets his ass kicked routinely. He gets locked up in a prison with a character who's making kryptonite out of his hands.
Sorry, what?
He is constantly in victim mode.
So even when kryptonite justifies why Superman is weak in that scene, that's not enough for you? This is your example of him being too weak in the movie?
Leader of the 110th Street Gang.
Like Green Lantern has much more success in this movie. Mr. Terrific has much more success in this movie than Superman.
Superman takes on higher level threats, so I imagine it'll be more difficult for him. If anything, that speaks to how super he is, the fact that he's most qualified to take down the most dangerous tasks.
Superman's parents from Krypton, if you're gonna go through the mythology, send him to Earth so that he can be a moral guide for people on Earth using his great powers to stop evil from happening to them. In this movie, his parents from Krypton send him there. This is the big revelation of the movie. His parents send him there to dominate the life on Earth as an alien invasion, essentially, and to create a harem of Earth women to have his many babies.
Well, sign me up.
So immediately you're taking the expectation of what you know about his Krypton parents and flipping it on its head.
Okay, that's great. Now explain why this is bad writing.
His parents, Ma and Pa Kent, in the original, they are noble and they are wise. They're kind of salt of the earth. Here, they're basically kind of, I don't know, like down home types who don't seem to, they live in a kind of a crappy house. They're the kind of people who call the TV the box. They're the kind of folks who are sitting around and you know, kind of scratching their butts. They're purposely cast as ugly and non-noble. Doesn't mean everything they say is bad, it isn't, but
I don't know what their looks have to do with anything, and I don't think he does either. Now with that aside, doesn't Ma Kent try to calm down Clark and help him rest when he goes to them for help? Doesn't Pa Kent have a scene where he uplifts Superman after his revelation about his Kryptonian parents? Did you watch the movie?
And by the way, both of them are alive in this, right? The original Superman mythos is that Pa Kent dies.
Why is this a bad subversion? Does his father need to die to have a good Superman story? I'm confused here.
The super dog is a terrible dog, is a dog that does not, like an idiot dog. Like way worse than my dog Happy. My dog Happy, way better than this dog, and my dog makes trouble. This dog is a mess.
I mean, yeah, sometimes pets misbehave. That's a natural part of the process. You're supposed to be outlining the bad subversions or why James Gunn wasn't the right pick for Superman.
I'm listening.
Supergirl is a drunken teenage brat.
Okay, why is this a bad thing? Establishing character flaws can set the basis for a later character arc.
Right, like anything that you think you know about the Superman universe, James Gunn is determined to debunk in the first half hour of the film.
That's one way to look at it, but I imagine James Gunn didn't want his movie to come across as stale since there have been many Superman adaptations by this point, so he made some changes to service the story. What is so intrinsically bad about this?
I think that it's a betrayal of the original IP and mildly upsetting.
So it's a betrayal because they changed a few things around to craft a more unique story?
Not like hugely upsetting, but mildly upsetting. That is my critique of James Gunn. He is not the right person for this film because James Gunn is not capable of delving, he's not capable of delving into a single character and examining his motivations and what's interesting about that character. He can't do it with Superman, he can't do it with Lois, he can't do it with Lex. Instead, he decides he's just going to toss everything into the stew.
Superman is motivated by his passion for good, values which his parents helped him develop. Lex Luthor is motivated by his envy for Superman, someone who grabs the attention and praise that Lex Luthor wants for his own intellect and accomplishments. Lois Lane fights for the truth so that those in power can't control people with lies. I've gathered all of this by just watching the movie, where we see the characters talk about what they believe in, where we see clashes in ideology, where we see their actions facilitating major plot beats. How did he fail to examine their motivations? I understood them just fine, and by having characters constantly clash with their motivations, we're able to gauge their commitment to their ideas.
And so you end up with this sort of ADHD film where a bunch of things are going on at the same time, but you never get a good, interesting perspective on anybody who's in the film. So Green Lantern is there, and he's kind of just a schmuck, and he's there as comic relief.
He's also there to represent the less hopeful and more mission-focused hero, seeing that he doesn't have the same code against killing and prioritizes the success of the mission, which is interesting because it's ultimately the symbol that Superman represents that motivates him to help the foreign country, calling him for help when Superman is occupied with saving the world. I also think the Justice Gang aids in the world building, showing us the more challenges Lex has to face and account for in his planning, and how different the world is compared to our world.
And then you have Mr. Terrific, who's the actual hero of the film, who you learn nothing about other than he's just kind of a noble do-gooder fellow.
Okay, I'll throw him a bone. I would like to have learned more about these characters in the Justice Gang. Do I think enough was given to justify their existence in the story? Sure. Can I also meet him halfway and agree that more could have been done to know these people personally? Also sure.
And you have all these superheroes who are wandering around. You never get any information about them that makes them interesting or sympathetic or even particularly cool. But you don't know the motivations of any of the villains except for Lex, who it turns out is just really kind of jealous of Superman because Superman has superpowers, and Lex is like, I'm really smart, and Superman is really strong, so why do people like Superman more than they like me? Which is a pretty boring motivation.
I don't see how that's a boring motivation at all, and it sounds to me like you don't like Lex Luthor that much as a character, despite claiming to be a fan of the Superman mythos. What I find interesting about his motivation is how it shows the indirect but negative influence his symbol can have on others, in spite of wanting to represent hope. And it's a fitting motivation to showcase what someone really smart can do to counter someone who is really powerful.
There's a scene where Clark and Lois, they've had a fight, and now they're back together, and they're having a talk, and it's supposed to be this very intimate talk where they're speaking with each other, and literally outside the window, Green Lantern and Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl are fighting a gigantic sort of eye monster that looks like it's from Suicide Squad.
Stop it right there, Joker. You never get me, Batman! Will you catch him up?
It's extremely distracting because he's James Gunn and everything has to be some sort of dumb joke. You're like, well, shouldn't Superman be doing something about it? No, let them handle it. Again, that's irritating.
Superman already explained why he let them handle it. They know what the threat is, they're qualified to handle said threat, so Superman isn't required to help them. However, I do agree that is kind of an annoying background detail in the context of the scene. This is meant to be a heartfelt moment between Clark and Lois, yet we have this running joke in the background that is weirdly distracting from it.
As far as the plot itself makes very little sense. The plot is basically that Lex Luthor has decided that he is going to make a deal with a foreign politician who the left wants to believe is both Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu, but actually is just kind of nothing, is going to invade another country. And Superman stops that invasion. Apparently Lex wants to use this as an excuse to box up Superman, saying that he's running counter to American foreign policy. Now, we've seen that iteration in other movies. Right, that was in Batman vs. Superman. You've seen it in other versions of the Superman story, but it's not really taken kind of to its ultimate extreme politically. In any case, it turns out that what he really wants is to annex half of this separate country. He's going to split it with this other dictator. One major plot hole. Lex Luthor is obviously the smartest person in the film. So smart, he can create his own universes. Is a major plot point. And he is concerned about a relatively small piece of land occupied by third worlders This is his big plan?
Yeah, because like you said, this will cause Superman to violate foreign policy, which would escalate conflict and in the long run, bring more backlash to Superman. It would also give him more of a justification to build a task force to stop Superman.
And later it turns out that he said, oh, no, I started that war just so that I could get people to turn against Superman. Okay, well, he does that halfway through the film.
Okay, so you just acknowledged that it wasn't about the land itself, rather, it was about the blowback towards Superman. Proofread your scripts.
Am I the only one who did the reading?
And then he jails him, and then he leaves him alive and explains this secondary plan that apparently was his primary plan, sort of. But he doesn't kill Superman at the time for a reason that remains undisclosed.
Lex literally says, you'd be terminated already if it was up to me, but first, the government has some questions they want answered. They literally tell you why he didn't kill him. He straight up says it in the film. Did you watch it?
Am I the only one who did the reading?
We hear that he killed 27 children, and you're always going to make mistakes, but that's how it is.
The entire plot is a complete mess. If you try to chart it, there's no way to do it because James Gunn doesn't care about plot. James Gunn doesn't care about characters. James Gunn cares about jokes and aesthetics. That's what James Gunn cares about.
Nobody cares anymore.
You mentioned one potential problem that isn't a problem because it's explained in the film, and you're telling me he doesn't care about plot?
Okay, the visuals are, when I say a mess, I mean that the visuals are CGI vomit. Like complete CGI vomit. So James Gunn has an addiction to kind of gross and weird imagery, which doesn't really fit in the context of the, again, Americana that is Superman. And so there's some really gross and weird images, particularly in the Pocket universe, where you have characters who are turning themselves into weird tentacly octopuses, and you have people's eyes being attacked on a wide variety of it. He has an obsession with eyes.
I can agree that the CGI isn't always up to par, but I'm confused by this point about gross images. This is imagery you would see in comic books that Ben Shapiro is claiming James Gunn doesn't care about. The stuff he's talking about sounds very standard and mild, so it's hard to take this complaint seriously.
Is what it feels like for large portions of the film. You never really get a kinetic scene of Superman doing something cool. You have multiple scenes of giant heavy objects falling on Superman and Superman stopping the giant heavy objects from falling to save an individual.
So there are scenes of Superman doing something cool.
Again, another plot hole. You'll have giant building. The entire building will fall, and he will stop the building from falling to save one person or a chipmunk who is in the way. But it's an entire building full of people, so presumably all those people are dead.
The city was being evacuated, and Clark would know if there were people in the building to save because he has X-ray vision.
Am I the only one who did the reading?
The music, again, John Williams is still alive. Just hire him to do your Superman movie, you stupid.
I actually have the opposite criticism. I think the music sounds good, but I would prefer if they used a more original score. I like when adaptations do that, like The Batman for example, or Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. I much prefer original scores over remasters of older themes.
Okay, then we get to the actual politics. So I know, this is what people are waiting for. They're waiting for my political rip on this film. So we've been told this is a movie about illegal immigration. Not really. Honestly, like you have to look to find that. There's one line where Clark is saying, aren't you gonna read me my rights? James Gunn's politics is so ham-handed, like truly ham-handed, that it doesn't even read as political, it just reads as stupid. So there's a moment where Clark, he's being arrested, and he says, aren't you gonna read me my rights? And one of the members of the government says, well, you're now considered an enemy alien, or you don't have any rights because you're not an American. All right, if that's supposed to be some sort of like anti-ICE sentiment, it's really weak. Also, legally incredibly stupid, considering that he came to Earth as a baby and then was adopted by an American family, which would make him American.
Do you really think that Lex Luthor has any regard for the law?
So, this brings me to my final point about this movie and all other Superman movies. The fundamental flaw in all Superman movies of my lifetime is the thing that Hollywood cannot say and will not do.
Politics, does he still stand for truth, justice, all that stuff?
The only Superman movie that I have ever seen that uses truth, justice, and the American way is the original 1978 Superman.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
This is not just a throwaway line. It is deeply important to the character of Superman. Why? Well, because take Superman just as a character. Superman is unbelievably powerful, unstoppable. He's faster than anyone. He has X-ray and laser vision. He's stronger than anyone, right? He's basically a god on Earth, and the biggest god. He's Zeus, right? He can do whatever he wants. And so, why is he the good guy? Why isn't Lex Luthor right? Because, let's be real, if there were a person on Earth who actually had those powers, Americans would rightly be very much afraid of that. Correctly. As Federalist 51 suggests, you need ambition to counteract ambition. If any one person had ultimate power, what you're really talking about is a philosopher king. And that's pretty scary because that person could be a dictator, simply doing whatever they want to the world. The only reason why Superman would be a hero as opposed to a villain is because he grew up in America, because he has the American way, right? He's emblematic of what America is. May blunder, may make mistakes, but overall stands for freedom and liberty, private property, and free speech, and all of those things.
All that stuff.
Okay, that's great. Show me where Superman doesn't support this in the movie. He works for the Daily Planet, which can only exist thanks to the First Amendment. He fights for the freedom of those being oppressed. Sure, he may not say the slogan you want him to say, but his actions reflect it. So what's the issue?
Right, all the good American stuff. There's a great comic book called Superman Red Sun. It's an alternative universe in which Superman's capsule from Krypton lands in Soviet Russia. And he grows up as the emblem of Soviet Russia. And he's evil because he grew up in Soviet Russia. Because if you give that power, that amount of power to an evil ideology, then evil ensues. So this is why it's really important. It's not just truth, justice, and the human way, or truth, justice, and all that good stuff. There's a specific definition of Americanism that says that this is why America, for example, should be a world power.
Superman doesn't believe in the American way just so America can be a world power. Superman believes in the American way because it represents life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Those values matter to him.
Because America is better than other countries, and people who live in accordance with Americanism make the world better if they have more power.
I feel like you missed what Superman's end goal is if your focus is on making America more and more powerful.
That's why America is good. Because otherwise, Superman is bad, and Lex Luthor is right, and we should restrict his power.
No, if America is bad, Superman will still be good. Superman is not a sycophant for America.
The problem is that Hollywood cannot say the American way because they don't believe in the American way. They don't believe that America is unique. They don't believe in these American basic values and principles and rights.
Then why does Superman display those values in the movie? Did you watch it?
And so what they come away with in kind of the key moment in this movie, for example, is Pa Kent telling Clark that parents don't make missions for their kids, right? They don't make their kids kind of what they are in terms of what they should be. They give the kids the tools to choose what they want to be, and then those choices make those kids what they are. Okay, that's kind of half true and half not. Of course, you give your kids the tools to make choices in life, but you also try to define the mission your kid should have in life. That's maybe the most important thing you do as a parent. Direct them in a world of choices at what is the ultimate good, what is the ultimate goal.
His point isn't that parents can't guide people to become who they are. In fact, that's part of what it means to give people the tools to choose what they want to be. His point is that they can't force a person to be someone they don't want to be. That entirely fits the situation, since his Kryptonian parents can't force him to be someone Clark refuses to be.
Hollywood is not run by people who believe that there is such a thing as an ultimate good or an ultimate goal. It's run by moral relativists who have a kind of, at best, soft-pedaled, generic, be nice attitude toward the world, which is why Superman's defense of intervening in this foreign conflict is,
People were going to die.
okay, well, people would die on the other side, presumably, if you didn't intervene.
Okay, but any decision can have long-term consequences. You can just as easily argue that superheroes saving people can motivate supervillains to challenge them.
You frighten criminals off the street entirely, except when you're off battling the likes of the Rhino.
So, as long as I keep fighting crime, you'll keep making bigger and badder...
Now you're learning.
In the short term, you have to make an immediate choice. But in the long term, you have a variety of choices you can make, which can evade the consequences you spoke of. You can at least have more of a chance when we're talking about the long-term side effects, because so much can happen in that time. In the short term, like Superman said, people were going to die. So he had to make a choice. Unless you're gonna be like those people who think Iron Man should have let children die.
Or people die every day in conflicts all over the world. Right? The reason that Clark or Superman is supposed to intervene is because one side is right and one side is wrong.
Well, if there's a side literally working with Lex Luthor and invading territories, I'm going to assume that they're in the wrong.
And unless you are willing to simply say that all foreign policy situations in which people die under any circumstances are equivalent, which I don't think is right, then you end up in this kind of weird generic place.
The film didn't say that whatsoever.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, my overall review, 2 out of 5 stars. Meh.
Goodbye, sir. I will not even dignify that argument with a response.
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys.
We're not finished yet.